Welcome to the Press Start podcast, Press Start Australia's weekly video game discussion podcast, brought to you today by SteelSeries and their new range of alias mics. They're mics made for gamers. And a big shout out to SteelSeries for continuing to support the show. I'm your host, Ewan, joined today by my fellow gamers and co-hosts, Shannon.
Hello.
James.
Hello.
And Kieron.
Hello.
We came into the start of that record laughing because that is my third attempt at reading people's names correctly. But hey, we did it. We are away. On the show today, we're going to be talking about Suicide Squad some more, the latest news around Xbox and their exclusives, of course. That's kind of a developing story. Hopefully it doesn't change between us recording it and me getting the episode out tomorrow. And the potential for a new Last of Us game, which I know James is excited the most to talk about. He loves it whenever I bring up The Last of Us on the podcast. But first, Kieron, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You have had the opportunity to play it. Yeah, what did you play? There was more I was going to say, but let me come to you first. What did you get to play? How did you find it?
So I got to play for the first time, just play straight from the beginning of the game for about 4 hours. So basically covering the first two chapters. The first chapter being, I guess, like the tutorialized section, which takes place in a flashback sequence that's super memorable for a lot of Final Fantasy fans, and that was really, really cool. And then the second chapter was pretty much just like a free roam out in the open world, in where the open world's first introduced in the game. So that was exciting. In the context of a preview, very difficult because there was so much stuff to do. And I was just being pulled in every direction. And the Square Enix people were like, you really should be going like this way. This is where the content is. And I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I want to ride chocobos. I want to dig for treasures. I want to, all this stuff. So yeah, it was very cool, very exciting. But lots more that I want to check out now.
I do want to point people the way of the website where they'll find your written preview, but you do also have like a video version of the preview. I think it's some of your gameplay capture, or maybe it was provided.
Bit of both, yeah.
Bit of both. Okay. But like, has it left you more excited for the game than you already were? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I don't think it was possible for me to be more excited, but I think my expectations have changed slightly just because there is more of like a contemporary open world element to the game that I wasn't really expecting. Now that I've like had a full taste of how it actually works, and what the cadence of things is, like there's things like, I guess, Ubisoft-esque towers to open up the map, and like intel and treasures and stuff to find, and little environmental details like Ghost of Tsushima style animals you can follow to find secrets and stuff. Just cool. Things like that I just wasn't expecting to see in a Final Fantasy game. Especially after 16, which had those like open zones, but was relatively like you just go to your quest marker and you do the quests and that was it.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. I did also spend a lot of time playing Queen's Blood, which is like the mini game card game that they've introduced. And I'm very excited to spend dozens of hours on that when the full game comes out.
Nice. Yeah, well, I'm excited to dive more into your preview and hopefully get my hands on the game myself some point soon. James, I'm glad you could join us on the show today, though, because you submitted a review for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League over the last couple of days. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of time with this game kind of prior to being out and servers being live. I, myself, have kind of wrapped up the story component now and like very much in the live service element, which I must admit I'm not thrilled by, but I'm curious. How did you find the game, giving it the time you've been able to?
Like, it's a pass. Like, it works for the most part. I don't know. It's hard because I've said in the past, I feel like there's definitely like a pile-on with this game. Yeah. But I still, even though like obviously I didn't love it, I just liked it like a very soft like. But I still think you should try it if you like DC, because I think that the story, like the characters and the writing is like still pretty solid. It's just that like as a game, it kind of like at the beginning we were quite positive when we talked about it. I think last week or the week before. But then obviously I spent more time with it, and you kind of understand like how little there is in terms of objective variety, and like what the game kind of makes you do during the campaign and stuff. It is very much rotating through the same 3 to 4 objectives. And as I start to, get a little bit more into the skill trees and stuff, it kind of becomes also a bit obvious that the characters are all very similar besides their traversal methods.
Yeah.
So there just isn't like a lot here for me to, I guess, keep playing. And that's the whole point of these games, right? Is like you're meant to have this like kind of end game where it's fun and desirable to go and do raid-esque missions or whatever. But I didn't get any of that from this. So I think it's really obvious that Rocksteady definitely didn't spend the 9 years making this game. I think that they definitely...
Yeah.
The rumors were that they started and stopped, I think, 2 projects before this, and you can definitely feel that. I just think there's not enough like meat on the bones, so to speak. Which is a shame, because like I do think the combat works. Like it does what it's meant to do. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't... There's no like shoddy hitboxes. Like it all feels quite accurate. The combat can be quite fun when you get into the swing of things. It's just there's not enough. It's very much like Anthem in a way, I feel, where there's just not enough there to kind of support that combat system. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not enough variety.
How do you think that like they're obviously doing, I think 4 characters have been announced here. Like how do you think that's gonna go down? Like will that be compelling enough to go back to, or
no, I don't think so. Like I'd be surprised. Because I don't know if this is like spoilers or not, but the way that it's gonna work is I'm fairly certain it's going to be the same boss in each of the new seasons. Which is justified narratively. But as I say in my review, it's a kind of plot point that they use in a lot of comic book movies that I'm kind of sick of. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to save it, per se. And there's also this horrible shit. Can't fucking stand when they're in games, when they stop you, like you're playing the main story, and it like stops you to go do side quests or whatever, just to like earn this. Because there's like 6 currencies, I think, or 6 resources or whatever. You need to mine one of them to even try the final boss in the main story, and I'm sure that will be the case in the future seasons as well. Which is just like, ugh, I hate it. It's like so
it's a bit
awful.
like it's very Destiny-esque in that regard, right? Like you kind of have like strikes, for lack of a better term, like these kind of bigger, harder missions where you get the better rewards, but there's this like entry cost attributed behind doing those, and if you don't have that currency to hand, you've got to go and do these other side objectives, which are just kind of rinse and repeating the same objective types to kind of get the currency that you need to buy in. And I also kind of gather as well, James, that like I'm really only started doing this, but each party member needs that same currency, so you kind of got to make sure everyone's done that and can kind of pay their way into those missions too, which is maybe I've got that wrong.
Like
but
it's honestly just like such a cheap and nasty way to pad out your game.
Yeah,
and I do feel for them, because I'm sure there were time constraints with how everything played out, and it's definitely not all in their hands, obviously. But I don't know. It just leaves such a sour taste in your mouth, especially when you're kind of starting to think this is all right. Like I don't mind it, and then you just get just completely all that momentum just disappears because you get blocked by having to do that.
It gets in the way of itself so bad. Like the story moments are otherwys good. I actually think the performances are good.
I agree.
The music hits
I think
at times,
they're all great. Like,
but
it's
gets in the way and just stumbles and falls. Anyone else?
On the plus side, I feel like a lot of people have learnt from this.
Yeah.
Like I feel like Sony already maybe have learnt and are pivoting away from games as a service. Like, but I hate that like maybe Rocksteady is going to be the sacrificial lamb for that, because this is like I worry for them. Like I don't know, I feel like the word of mouth of this game is just like irrevocably bad at this point, even though it's not as bad as people are saying. But yeah, it's just so weird to think this came from the people who made the Arkham games. And I know people were a little bit down on Arkham Knight, but all of those games were still quite solid, and I still to this day feel like they're better than Spider-Man, but that's obviously another topic.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some fun to be had with this. I think it might be a bit hard to justify jumping in now and like paying full price for it, but there's a lot of like
the retail price is like $119. I think you can get it for $99 now, maybe.
I just don't know. But that being said, I think there is a lot of potential in there. And I think you've kind of said as much in your review as well, James, that who knows, like maybe when some of these other characters that Shannon mentioned, like come out, that coincides with some additional mission types and stuff and just adds a bit more variety and makes kind of full use of the combat system they developed.
Like that is obviously potential for the game, but then you think like they're going to be working on this for like probably at least a year. It's the same with Crystal Dynamics with Avengers. Like they're going to be tied to this now because like they've promised that content and who knows how much further that goes. So it's not as if they can just be free of this and start the next thing. Like obviously it'll only be part of the team or whatever, but still it's just...
I think, to be honest, I think worse games have been turned around better over time. Like, I think about how Siege launched, and that was pretty average.
Yeah.
And, but like, even Cyberpunk, obviously. But I don't, I would be
But
surprised.
I don't know if it's worth... Is it worth doing that for this? Like, is it worth spending another 2 years? Like, I don't...
Well, especially like I think WB is like in, quite a lot of debt between like, the movies and TV side of things, but also games. So I don't know. I don't think that WB will sustain this for as long as they need to. But have to wait and see. Maybe those $20 Mortal Kombat skins will make up for it. Maybe.
If you keep buying them, then...
Yeah, it's just me. It's me. I'm funding Suicide Squad. Just me. But yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating game, and I could talk about it longer, but we do need to move on because I want to tackle this Xbox news that I think is kind of very much like the big subject of the day, and I think we'll probably be talking about this a lot more next week too. But in the last couple of days, new reports of Xbox games coming to other platforms have emerged, including both Starfield and the newly announced Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Xbox Era claims that Microsoft is making additional investment into PS5 development kits, and that Starfield is joining Hi-Fi Rush, which we spoke about earlier, and Sea of Thieves as part of a major pivot in strategy to recoup money, quote, left on the table for these titles. A lot of the stuff that we've kind of been speculating they might do. In response to the developing story, head of Xbox Phil Spencer has announced a business update event scheduled for next week where they'll be sharing what's next in the brand's future. Shannon, obviously we've speculated at length about Xbox's next steps for a while now, but it seemingly is upon us now. The time is nigh. What do you think is in the immediate future for Xbox?
I love that we've just gone through 2 years of talking about them acquiring Activision Blizzard, and now they're just like going third party again once that's complete. It's such a hard one. Like, I think obviously this started, I don't even know if it was last year, or like there's been rumblings for like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves for a while, which like people were upset about, the Xbox sort of diehards, but no one was really like up in arms or like thinking it was a strategic change. But then as like this week has rolled out, there's rumors of everything from Starfield to sort of Gears coming to PlayStation. It's a complex one. Like every time I think about it, like I come away with a new thought or a different thought in terms of like, it makes sense, but then like, obviously it could mean that they sell even less Xboxes, or like Xbox Game Pass goes down and people can play things on PlayStation. But then I think back to like, what else could they do apart from this at this moment? Like if console sales are tracking behind Xbox One and Game Pass isn't growing, like what other options do they have? So I think we are going to see Xbox games on PlayStation and Switch to a lesser degree. I don't think it's going to mean any change to like console strategy in the near future, but again, it does put that question in your mind, and it does put a little bit of doubt that if they end up selling a lot more games on other platforms and Xbox console sales drop and they're huge on PC, like what does that mean for Xbox? But they've just acquired two of the biggest publishers and own a lot more. So they're a huge part of the industry. So I don't think they're going to go away, but I think they're just going to start trying things differently and throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping that it comes off, which is great for everyone. But yeah, it feels like a weird time. Like we've finally hit like next year, Xbox will be at a place where they're releasing games. We finally feel like we're hitting that, and now they're going to start releasing the games on PlayStation. So it's weird. I don't think anyone expected this to happen now, I don't think.
Yeah, we've been saying for forever, it's like Xbox needs more exclusives, like more high quality exclusives, and now they've got more than the rest combined potentially at their disposal, and they're pivoting away from that. But yeah, maybe that is actually how they get their games kind of in the hands of gamers, and they at least kind of do it via via an ecosystem in Game Pass that they control and get the revenue from. But yeah, Kieron, what's your gut feel, I suppose, at this point in time? Maybe we'll have a bit more clarity on this next week. But how does Xbox handle the release of their games going forward? Do you think it'll be a hard and fast rule that everything's everywhere, or will it be timed exclusives, or maybe just a bit of both?
I mean, I think it's still probably in their best interest to have some timed exclusives, or even some like hard and fast exclusives, like Forza, Halo, that kind of thing. Even though like Halo's already on the table as a rumored crossover. I guess like it's not overly surprising in some ways. I mean, it's money on the table that they obviously want. And Microsoft as a company, like they dabble in hardware, but like if you look at their PCs, they do high-end kind of PCs with Surface, like they're a premium product, but they're in everyone else's PC already anyway. And I feel like they've looked at that strategy and thought, you know, maybe this can apply to games, and maybe it means that they change their hardware strategy a little bit in the future, because right now the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are pretty similar. And I think that probably contributes a lot. Like there's not a good reason to own both. So if the games you want are on one, then that's where you go. Maybe in the future they'll have a more premium, more expensive console than Sony, and that'll be like their position in the market. Or they go the other direction. You know, I think there's options for them to still continue in hardware if they have a compelling product. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we'll just see like a soft rollout, and then they'll play it by ear from there.
Yeah, like I suppose you've got the Samsung TVs that have the app built in. So like technically, like there's not a console exclusivity here as well. And if you've got a PC, you can make use of PC Game Pass as well. So maybe that's already kind of been somewhat eroded, but like as you said, Xbox is going to be the best place to play for so many people. Like if you want to kind of sit down at your TV and get 4K resolution gaming with a controller, like that's always going to be an Xbox. Hard to say. James, what's your feeling on, I guess, like these kind of developing story of games going exclusive, and now I guess like Phil Spencer's reaction to it as well? He seems to have like responded pretty quickly to this story growing by announcing this business update.
I don't know. I kind of wish that they would just talk about it now. Like I know that you can't, like in the corporate world, you can't kind of just do that. That's not really how it works at the same time. So it's kind of stupid of me to say that. But I do think with the way people talk about and speculate about these things, like it's just snowballing at the moment, and it's just like dominating like everywhere I look. In terms of like how I feel about it, I don't really know. I don't really understand what it means. I don't really want to jump to any conclusions either. I think that what probably will happen is, I'm assuming the hardware will still happen, but so if you buy hardware, you might get games earlier and on Game Pass, you know. But then obviously, if you want to wait a few months, you can buy it on PS5, and that kind of solves their problem that I think they have. I think me and Shannon talk about this like not every day, but regularly. It's like there's millions of people subscribing, right? But there's not a lot of growth happening now. Like it's kind of stagnated a bit. And if they can get that, there's still a lot of people paying that money every month, and they're getting that cash, you know, in hand every month. But then like to be able to kind of have these random ass injections from like a PS5 launch or a Switch launch of something would probably just help as well. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money, right? Like it's not about letting everyone play the game. Like I'm sure that's what they obviously say at the front-facing kind of PR side of things, but it is definitely about money. And I think that they definitely would probably look at, say, Starfield, and all of their other first part like Forza, and probably have seen there's not as big a jump in subscribers since for both those games.
Yeah.
My hope is that they keep doing hardware. Like I don't think you guys or anyone wants a world where it's just Sony making hardware. Like I don't think that's gonna be beneficial to anyone. Like, I think
Yeah.
they're already quite complacent. I think being number one, especially this year. So, and with some of their choices. But I think to have no competitors then is like really bad.
Yeah.
Which, like, obviously, yeah. But then my other thing is like, I don't think if we just port Starfield to PS5, does that magically save Xbox? Like, it's not like, these games also aren't the critical darlings or like the games that kind of move units. Like, people are saying, would you buy Halo Infinite if it was on PS5? And it's like, if the Xbox audience didn't buy Halo Infinite on Xbox, what chance does the PlayStation audience have to buy it? Like,
Or they didn't sign up to like a $15 a month kind of subscription service
I
for the
think-
sake of playing it either.
And I wonder if they shot themselves in the foot with that $1 trial for so long. Like, I know a lot of people who would just create a trial for $2 or like $1 or so, whatever it was, and just play that game for the month and then just give it up. And like, yes, that's like shitty, scummy behavior, but like, I guess like that's just what happened. But yeah, someone else.
I was gonna say, like, Xbox is making money. It's like billions of dollars in profit, or $1 billion, or I can't remember what. Like, they're making a lot of money with the Xbox brand. I think it probably just comes back to like Spider-Man, where we're talking about. I don't even know if that's made money. Spider-Man 2, like, in how much they spent on development and how much that's sold, and it's still, it's probably like break even, or like it's not as if they've made $1 billion in sales like they would from a movie. So for Xbox, like, it's not as if they're going to go on. Microsoft isn't going to go under tomorrow, but I feel like it's probably just looking at like Starfield and Halo and Gears and like how many hundreds of million they're spending in development, and then just trying to get some of that back so like they can actually keep making these big games and like at least come out even, and then Game Pass is sort of topping that up as a whole. I think it's probably just trying to recoup some of that. I think the issue is like, it's once you say that 4 or 5 games are coming to PlayStation, like immediately like people are going to wait for games, and it just changes everything. I think that's like once you open that door and like you put Halo and Gears and Starfield and whatever else on another platform, like it just changes everything in what we've known for the last 20 years. So it's not a bad thing, and they're going to make more money from it. It's just like, where does that leave the Xbox brand? Which, yeah, I don't want to go too far down any path, but I'd argue like Bethesda, like they're already, like these brands are new to the Xbox staple, like Halo and COD are Xbox, but like it's not as if a lot of these brands are traditionally like Xbox household names as an Xbox franchise.
Yeah. I think whilst it remains kind of up in the air as to whether these games are going to be available on other platforms, the people that have a PlayStation, have a Switch, and we're kind of maybe starting to flirt with the idea of signing up to Game Pass, maybe getting an Xbox to do so. Like, they're just gonna wait that little bit longer, I think. Like, and that's where I think they had to be so consistent with it is an Xbox or like a Game Pass exclusive. Like, if you don't have a device that has access to Game Pass, you cannot play this game. It's like they had to be kind of really clear on that information, and I hope that when they come out and provide an update and whatever sort of change in strategy is going to come about as of that, like they're really kind of clear in the communication. I think they have to be, because to your point, Shannon, if we come away from that with speculation that Indiana Jones is like maybe still coming to the PS5, like people are just gonna sit and wait, I think.
Or it can't just be like a game hasn't sold as much as we wanted, or like we're going to put it on PlayStation. Like, I feel like there needs to be a strategy behind it. Like, it's going to be a year. Like, if you want to play a game in the first 6 months, it's going to be on like something like it needs to be on the front foot. Like, it needs to be ahead of it with a strategy, not reactive to the game flopping or whatever.
I think that makes a lot of sense and still a really strong value proposition. Like, if you go, okay, every Xbox exclusive, like first party title is gonna be Game Pass exclusive for the first year, and then like there's the potential for it to come to other platforms. Like, if they're just like there's a 12-month rule, I think that makes total sense.
It's a good marketing technique. Like, if Starfield is on PlayStation and like maybe the average gamer doesn't really know what it is, and a friend says, oh, it's on Game Pass or PC Game Pass. Like, I just think it opens these games and franchises up to more people, which will drive Game Pass up. I'm sure that's what they're hoping. Like, nobody knows how it's going to shake out, though. You can't really go back once they do it. But
I also think it's like fascinating that all this is happening while like Pal World is a thing, and a lot of people are playing that in Game Pass, and that's kind of like an early preview thing anyhow. Like the game's not officially released, I suppose. It's in an early access sort of state.
But I think
and like that word of mouth
that's the problem,
has got to be
though.
good.
Like that's
service.
probably the biggest success for Game Pass. Ever.
But what has that brought? But the question there is like, what has that brought Microsoft? Like, have people signed up to Game Pass to play Power World?
I feel
or
like
bought an
people
Xbox
are
to play
buying.
Power World?
I feel like they are for that game more than.
Do you think people are buying hardware? Do you think people are buying hardware for Power World?
Oh, I don't know if people. Well, I don't know. Maybe it has become a bit of like a cultural phenomenon. I did acquire a Series S.
That's what
actually. Exactly. Fair point.
So Ewan bought a Series X for Power World.
Ewan bought, Ewan shift the needle.
I didn't know that. That's like really interesting to me.
Did you not know I bought an S? Did that not come up?
No, I've never heard that. I thought you were playing on a Series S.
I didn't buy it new. I bought it off my brother's girlfriend. They're about to move overseas, and I was like, I'll give you a couple $100 for that X.
But if Power World didn't exist,
Series
you
S,
have done
I should
that.
say.
Well, that kind of it was also
Well,
my
it
point.
came at the
Microsoft
time.
made nothing from that transaction between you and I.
Yeah. It went from one person that did want one, someone else that kind of didn't want one.
I feel like Power World is probably a good example though, because I know quite a few people who like heard of that because of Game Pass or tried it on Game Pass and then immediately bought it on Steam because the updates are coming faster on Steam.
Also doesn't help Xbox.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like there's more people playing it on PC.
Yeah.
Is Microsoft getting any of that?
If you shift that and say, this game is on PlayStation, but there's a better experience, or like you get stuff sooner on Game Pass, maybe it works the same way as Steam is working for Power World.
I wonder how effective the strategy for like Ubisoft and EA has been for like those, you pay for this deluxe edition, you get 3-day early access.
I think all split launches are really successful. 100%. Well, I don't know about
maybe that's
Suicide
exactly what
Squad.
Xbox are looking at and
Obviously.
going like, if we can just get kind of a die-hard sort of fan base to kind of come in as like early adopters in the Xbox ecosystem and like champion this game for the first year as we essentially kind of stress test it to a degree, or maybe like kind of have it in like an early access state, then like 12 months later there's a bit of momentum and stuff and it has a kind of a bigger multi-platform launch. I'm starting to convince myself that that's a good idea.
I guess
but then the flip side of that is if a game is broken for the first year on Xbox, then releases on PlayStation with like a day one gold.
Would a
edition,
Halo
like
Infinite release 12 months later on PlayStation?
Yeah,
I'd
with
say
co-op.
to James's earliest point. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean that's what's going to happen with
complex.
Starfield. So
I think early access launches work if the game is good and there's like word of mouth and people are like, I don't want to wait 2 days I just want to play it now. Like, and that's
I'm conflating two things that are very different,
Yeah.
I suppose. But yes, yeah.
well, like, it's like early access, but for like a year. It's
I
the
did
same
sort of
thing.
have the question that I think like we've kind of already touched on, but I'm eager to kind of put it to you, James. Like, whilst all this is up in the air, do you think it's damaging Xbox's brand? Is that why Phil Spencer's like so quick to kind of put a statement out? Like, I'm not confident this business update was planned for next week, which anyway. I don't think it was a date they had in the calendar.
The
It feels
original
reactive.
leak was, which I think is true, was that it was going to be Feb at some point. So like, I believe
Maybe
that.
it was. Then. Yeah.
Like I was saying before, I feel I don't actually think what Phil has said is like enough. Personally, like I definitely think they should just rip the band-aid
Well, it
off.
says that it's happening, right? So like, I feel like you need to try and say something more now.
Yeah, rather than just be like, yeah, something's going on, tee and then like just letting everybody just like go ape shit on social media about it. Do you know what I mean? And this is obviously
does a week make a difference? Can you not wait a week?
It depends, I guess. I don't know.
It's
like
a long time, Yui.
I said to Shannon like 2 days ago, I'm like, do I just they're quitting Xbox, do I just lose my library? Like, I've thought about that, and then I was like, do I keep buying games on
Lost sleep
Xbox?
over it.
Yeah, like I haven't lost sleep, but like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm not even like, there's like, I've seen psychotic people on Twitter as usual, but like I've saw 2 people at least trade their Xboxes in and make a big drama about that, and like I'm not obviously that type of
What
person.
does that look like?
What do you mean?
What does a big drama about trading in their Xbox look like? Is that
I feel like
sort of like
posting a
ceremony?
screenshot of your
on one
receipt
hand,
of
like,
you trading it in is like very dramatic.
It
And being
sounds
like,
crazy,
"See
but
ya,
then I kind of
Xbox."
get like 10 years of waiting for like this moment that we've come to now, and then it just feels like they're blowing it up. But like, it doesn't affect anyone personally.
Do you know what? The problem is, this is how I felt in the Wii U era, and like they came out on top at the end. So like, I feel like maybe it can happen for Xbox. But
Nintendo like stuck with their kept that horse in the race, like they stuck to their guns.
They dropped motion. They did in some ways, but they definitely abandoned like the motion controls or whatever and went more traditional.
Oh, I mean in like the sense like the discussion that's come up before. It's like why don't Nintendo release their games on other platforms? They would sell so well, but they've doubled down and made millions now selling Switches.
Yeah. I know. But what I'm just saying, I feel the same way I felt like when I was a Nintendo fan during the Wii U. Is like you just get this constant like one more year, one more week, one more whatever. Next game. Crackdown 3 is the game that will save Xbox.
Yeah.
And then so and then
I don't. It's hard. The bad part for them is it is damaging because we're talking about it and speculating, like, which is natural for anyone to do. Like,
which is what everyone is doing. Everyone who has a podcast this week will be talking about it. Like, absolutely.
But even just normal like friend groups and whatever. Like, I'm not saying podcasts. Like anyone just talking about it and speculating. Like, you think the worst. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what actually is in this.
Yeah, there's just like so much noise, and I feel like they could really cut through that with like maybe just a little bit more clearer messaging. But they've never been good at that, so that's like why I think next week we won't know anything. Like I feel like it's going to be even when they bought Bethesda and stuff, and they were being like so weird about like what will and won't be exclusive and stuff. Like it's just I don't know. They have to be clear.
And I think if they are releasing new hardware this year, I think like now is the time to talk about it and like give people confidence in the brand. Like I think you just lay it all out there and say what the next 12 months looks like, and beyond, and say we don't know for sure, but like here's what we know for sure today, and here's what we're reevaluating, and just be honest at this point. I think.
Yeah, I put a lot of faith in Phil Spencer. Like, I think he's made a lot of strong calls at Xbox. If the games had come out and been critical, critically better received, I suppose, like better received by the fan base as well, this would be a very different situation. Like, had Redfall been incredible, had Halo Infinite been everything we wanted it to be, had Starfield been like as good as Skyrim was, like all of this sort of thing, like we'd be in a very different position. So
games are hard.
Yeah, for sure. Anyhow, I think we better crack on. No doubt next week we'll have way more to discuss on this, and we'll probably time the podcast, I'd have thought, around the announcement whenever that is. We don't yet have a date or time for that.
Brody and James can live burn their consoles controllers.
Add my newly purchased Series S to the fire. All right, before we move on, I want to tell you more about these SteelSeries mics that we're using here on the show. As we said before, we're incredibly grateful for SteelSeries for kitting us out with these brand new Alias mics and helping us sound great without complicating our setups. They really complement all of our SteelSeries headsets as well. Big fan of all of their stuff. I'm using the Alias, which plugs straight into my PC with a single USB-C connection. Mine's got some like handy LEDs on it that show my levels and indicate if the mic is muted. Thankfully now it's not. Whereas Shannon has the Alias Pro, which makes use of an XLR connection into a DAC, which kind of puts some handy controls at his disposal. But both make full use of SteelSeries' Sonar software, which includes like all their fancy noise cancellation software, EQs, and a ton of other settings, as well as like a volume mixer as well. So really handy for managing all your audio, no matter what sort of setup you've got. But massive thanks again to SteelSeries for supporting the show again. Moving on. The Grounded 2 documentary came out this past week with tidbit from Neil Druckmann that suggests that part 3 could be on the way. I see Shannon's eyes immediately light up. Quote, "I don't have a story, but I do have a concept. That to me is as exciting as the first Last of Us, as exciting as first Last of Us, as exciting as 2. It's its own thing, yet has a through line for all 3. Druckmann says, as he explained the concept for the game, that genuinely excited him Druckmann says, as he explains a concept for the game that genuinely excited him that didn't exist for quite a time. So it does feel like there's probably one more chapter to this story. I butchered your writing there, Kieron, but hopefully that somewhat made sense. Shannon, I might come to you first. Do we get another Last of Us game in the foreseeable future? And what direction do you think it goes?
Yeah, I feel like Neil wouldn't say this, particularly what happened with online, if it like wasn't happening in the pipeline at some point. I think foreseeable future, I think it's like 4 or 5 years away, at least. Granted, I don't know how much more they could evolve gameplay, so I'd like to think a lot of the systems that they showcase in Grounded would be there. Direction is a tough one. Like, no one would have predicted that part 2 would go in the way that it did in any way, shape or form. So I think it's exciting if he's found something as equally good and groundbreaking as those. Be interesting. I'd like to see it like in the future again, and just, I don't know, like Ellie, Abby, and where those characters are at, and I don't know. I can't even think or speculate about what it couldn't tell. But I trust if he's got something that he's confident in, I don't think anyone cares more about this franchise than him and these characters.
I suppose like after the first game, like we didn't know there was gonna be a part 2. And I'd kind of like that they had the attitude then of like, we'll only do a second if we feel like there's a story to be told and if we kind of arrive at that. So it excites me that there is at least kind of conceptually or thematically a story that he feels compelled to tell. It kind of feels like a lot of the plot beats that maybe kind of get there, he doesn't quite know, but then it wouldn't surprise me if he's been a bit cryptic and it's actually kind of more fleshed out and mapped out than he's perhaps letting on. And who knows, I guess when like, I actually haven't watched the documentary yet, but who knows when that dialogue was recorded. Like maybe it's advanced since then. But yeah, I think there's still like within the universe of Last of Us, and without spoiling too much, I think there's a lot unresolved, like particularly for like Ellie as a character. And it wouldn't surprise me, like given the relationship that she has with Dina, if they kind of like further explored that and see what she would be prepared to do to kind of protect her in that relationship in the same way that Joel was presented with those challenges and asked to make really difficult choices. And like, would we see like a full circle character moment for Ellie in which like she acts differently, or does she behave in the exact same way? I think that'd be something really interesting to explore. But yeah. Did you enjoy the documentary otherwise, Shannon?
Yeah, it was good. I didn't watch the first one, and to be honest, like normally this type of stuff doesn't hold my interest too much, but it was really good. It's a shame that like I feel like around the leak and some of the crucial parts of development sort of weren't captured because of COVID, and I feel like that bit was kind of rushed through in particular. But yeah, super insightful, and just we all know how much detail Naughty Dog put into things, but like going into some of that stuff was really cool.
Just really crazy what Laura Bailey had to go through as well. That's nuts. Kieron, do you have you played much of the remaster, and I guess like this mentioned in Grounded as well? Have you got an appetite for more of The Last of Us?
Yeah, I mean, I did play through the main story again in the remaster. Which reminded me of how like strong that story actually is. After a couple of years to reflect on it, I think like I'd be excited to see a part 3 that kind of pays off a lot of that stuff. Like you already said, I think there was lots of cool kind of character learnings and stuff through the second one. I can even see a third game introducing like a common enemy for these characters that we already know that have been clashing this entire time to kind of come together and go up against. I feel like that would be a really good payoff for a lot of those character arcs. But I don't know. I mean, there's, like Shannon said, who knows? Yeah. And it could be closer as well than we think, because that documentary obviously started filming in 2019. So it's like,
I do remember what I first thought of when I feel like around Ellie's cure and like more stuff around that and like exploring that would be. I feel like that wasn't much of the second game.
That kind of fell off.
And like other people, like things like that. I think in this world, and that's what it was about initially. It would be cool to explore again.
It wouldn't actually surprise me if it starts with Abby and spends quite a bit of time with her, and then that kind of comes up and she goes off in search for her to like give her a second chance. And yeah, and then where that goes, I don't know what I would want to happen, but I would be there for it. James, how do you want to weigh in? Do you want me to ask about Uncharted instead, or do you want to talk about some of The Last of Us?
No, we can move on. Let's do whatever you want.
Do you want me to ask you about Uncharted? Because
Sure, ask me.
if
Go
we can
on.
stick with
I'll
Naughty
give you
Dog
the
for a
music.
sec.
Years Uncharted
I consent.
combo back PlayStation.
Yeah. Courtesy of the Xbox Era podcast, which we need to credit as well for a lot of this Xbox story. So Xbox Era really contributing a lot to the discussion today. There's a rumor that Uncharted Drake's Fortune, a remake of the game, was floated internally at PlayStation. And this has kind of been kicked around a little bit because of the the visual arts group. That's what they started on before they did The Last of Us, and that got palmed back over to Naughty Dog. But it does seem like of all of the Uncharted games to kind of remake, a bit of an odd one to focus in on. I'm curious though, James, like, do you see Uncharted coming back in any capacity? Could it be a remake of the first game, or would you like to see them handle it a bit differently?
I don't. I think my prediction about PlayStation was right. If they're really remaking Uncharted 1, like,
I will. It's been the same
can
amount of time between RE4 and remake and Uncharted and the
okay.
remake. Just for
Different.
the context,
just
before you,
games were very different when the original
a
RE4.
year apart.
No, oh my god. Maybe we should just move on. What are your thoughts, Ewan?
I don't know why Shannon just like set out
literally,
to get,
because
he
he just
let you
takes
say
Well,
one
that's
word
a
and then
personally.
came after
That's
you.
a fact.
And then he starts
I feel like
screaming
that's just,
like
that's
typical
just
Shannon.
fact.
Regardless if it's fact or not, like, it just the choice for you to bring it up when you did was what I was questioning.
Anyway, Ewan,
was
I think
intentional.
when I went back, when I played the Uncharted games on PS4, I did think the first one, there was something about it that was really rough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I that in that way it makes sense to me, absolutely.
It's definitely aged the worst. Like, yeah, you're right. It is rough nowadays.
Yeah, I would just rather like all speed ahead on something new from Naughty Dog at this point. Like, I as much as I like shit on like Last of Us 2 from time to time, I respect that it did something very different. And by flipping the script, like, I feel like that was quite well done. So I'm keen to see them try something new. Like, I just am not like, you know, between like Until Dawn and Uncharted 1. Like, I don't know. I'm just not interested in revisiting these games again. Like, I don't. Yeah, that's it. That's my
I'm
bit.
convinced that that Bend is making a new Uncharted game. Like, I think they will reboot the franchise to a certain extent.
I've got to
Maybe
be
with
honest,
a familiar
though.
character.
I
but-
finished 4 and I'd liked Locke's Legacy quite a lot, but I just didn't.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I needed more from those games. Like, I feel like they were well and truly done with what they could do, in terms of just like the cinematic spectacle and the way all of the set pieces play out and stuff. I just didn't feel like there was anything.
Let me put it this way:
untouched.
I would rather another Uncharted game than Days Gone 2, though. Like, that's kind of where
I still think there's
like,
untapped potential in what Days Gone was. Like, I don't like. I'm not saying
Uncharted is such like a like it's just a game that anyone can play. Like, if you play like 2 or 3, like if you play FIFA and COD, like you could play Uncharted. Like, my dad played the first 3. Like, it's just a game that anyone can enjoy. Like, it's a blockbuster. Yeah, I don't think it's quite the
I
same.
think
Like,
it-
it's
I
not
think
like a
it could
Death Stranding
definitely-
2 type game.
Yeah, and given we've had the film now as well, like, I feel like it could sit in the same wheelhouse that like the Spider-Man games do. Like, it's just
it's
that
like
kind
Spider-Man.
of
It's just-
popcorny sort
exactly.
of very accessible game.
To be honest, I would prefer an Uncharted, because I feel like with Uncharted 4, I did feel like the story was interesting, but the game got in the way of that a lot, because it was just a lot of shootouts regularly. But if they were to pivot Uncharted to still have those like big bombastic set pieces, but be that more exploratory kind of Tomb Raider-esque experience. Like, I know that like Tomb Raider obviously isn't as popular, but like I would probably prefer that more. But that's not what makes the big bucks. The big
it
bucks
honestly
is
wouldn't
the
surprise
big
me if,
exploding
like-
things that you run away
Yeah.
from.
I think it needs new characters, which that's what doesn't make sense about remaking the first. Like, if they're doing
Yeah.
a new game with new characters, why would you remake the original, unless it's like
we always
something,
have said
which was the
like
rumor.
Ms. Uncharted, like you play as Nathan Drake's kid or whatever. Like that would be
Which
cool.
maybe that is why
And
people
do, like,
would
the
need
Star
context
Wars-
of the original.
Yeah, like the Star Wars thing where like you have the old characters appear, but not as the main characters or something.
Yeah, it could be a bit weird, I guess. Like if that's the focus of the game is like his daughter, but then you watch the movie and it's still like Tom Holland running about. It's like you're not telling me this bloke's got a kid.
What if it's a
ready to take the
remake
reins.
with Tom Holland's face, his
Oh, yeah.
likeness?
That would be really good. That would be something I'd really
Mark Wahlberg.
enjoy.
All right. Let's move on. I have a rapid fire question for you all. Star Wars Jedi Survivor won a Grammy this week for its soundtrack. James wanted to make sure I didn't miss that piece of news and forwarded on a lovely message that he received from
From a fan.
from a fan. What game would you submit for the Grammys Hall of Fame? Should that be a game soundtrack, I should say? One game soundtrack you would put forward to enter into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Kieron, what would that be?
There's a lot. I'm just gonna say, because I've got the vinyl sitting back there, the Death Stranding soundtrack, like the original score.
Oh,
I still very much enjoy. So yeah, that one.
Shannon.
I don't know. Uncharted. the theme song is. Nah, I think Skyrim. Like
theme song's
Skyrim's one
great.
that always people come back to and listen to the soundtrack a lot. I think Skyrim, and it's just iconic for a number of reasons. So what's wrong with that?
It's a good shout, James.
Mass Effect.
Ooh, yes.
Okay. I feel like there is like too many to mention. It's hard.
There
for a
is, but
rapid
Mass
fire
Effect
question.
is like the choice. Just
The
letting you
one
know.
I continually go back to, and it's maybe a bit of a cop out because I don't know how much it was original, but the Hotline Miami soundtrack, like, just.
Oh hell yeah.
I was thinking about that again recently, playing The Last of Us remastered, and damn, it's so good. Because she's playing it on the Vita.
I had to think about that for a second. Then I was like, oh, yeah, you can like literally hear the song coming out of the
Yeah,
the
you
Vita.
can. I was like, oh, that soundtrack's so good. All right. What the Wiki is the Press Start podcast game show where the previous week's winner reads part of a Wikipedia page for an unknown game, and we, the contestants, must guess the game. A point is awarded for each correct guess, with the round ending after a person's bagged themselves 2 points. As last week's winner, Kieron, is in the hosting chair. There's big change up in the scoring last week. James is still in first place. Actually, no, sorry, James, you might have moved up into first place as a result last week. I can't remember. Anyhow, you're on 5 points. Brody, Shannon, Kieron are all tied in second place on 3 points each. And I am bringing up the rear on 2 points. Don't get too excited, Shannon. I'm bringing up the rear and the points. But Kieron, you won last week, so the hosting duties are all yours. Take it away.
Okay. I was struggling to find games that weren't too easy or that we've used before, but let's see how we go.
I feel like, yeah, we've used a lot of games.
We have used a lot of games.
We need a new game.
We need. I have ideas for that. I
Oh.
told you, and maybe one of them.
Did you?
But we'll yeah.
Do you
let's
know-
move
Let's
Okay,
let's
we
go.
can
Let's
talk about
go.
this later.
Game number 1 is a 2-dimensional puzzle platform game set in a 3-dimensional world. The player character lives peacefully on a 2-dimensional plane until he receives an item and witnesses the breakup of a giant golden hexahedron that tears the fabric of space-time and
James.
reveals a third dimension. James.
Is it Fez?
Yeah, it's Fez.
I was thinking that, and I was like, it's not.
Well, it is. Sorry.
It is.
I didn't think Kieran would pick Fez. I don't know.
You just-
Continue.
There actually was I started with a theme, and that kind of, I was like, oh, this is actually terrible, which is why I'm so unprepared right now. But that was the first one in that theme.
James is off the mark then, up on 6 points now. We better stop him here, Shannon. We don't want him getting that bonus point.
Ape Escape.
I was tempted to change what game I'm going to read out next, but anyway,
Do it.
no.
It's all part of the strategy.
Game number 2 is played through a third-person over-the-shoulder view. Players are allowed to switch between first-person and third-person at any moment. Players either travel on foot or ride various types of mechanized suits. The suits carry heavy weapons
Ewan.
such as chain... Ewan?
No, I feel like I've panicked here. Anthem was what I was going to say, but
It is not Anthem.
yeah.
Such as chain guns and rocket launchers. They can pick up weapons lying on the ground and fire multiple weapons at once. On foot, players are able to use a grappling hook to pull themselves up to normally hard to reach places, or to hook onto one of these suits and hijack it.
Shannon.
Oh,
Shannon.
Titanfall 2.
Not Titanfall 2. This is harder than I thought it was going to be.
Game I know.
first. You said first or third person, right?
First and third person. Someone will get it after this.
I feel like James knows it, and he's just.
Are we all back in?
I think you're all
Yes.
back in. Driving the suits and using certain weapons requires thermal energy. Also, the planet's cold temperatures cause the characters...
Shannon. No.
Shannon?
I'm
It's,
blanking.
I don't know. Lost Planet 3, 2, or the original.
No,
You,
stick with
no,
the
you
first
picked you picked 3.
James,
It's not Lost Planet
Ewan.
3.
Oh my god, Ewan.
How about
Wow.
James? James, can you give me the full title?
Lost Planet Extreme Condition.
Yeah, okay, you got it.
I would have never got that in a million years.
I knew it was Lost Planet, but I didn't know which one. And then, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
James
Well,
bags
shit.
himself the full 3 points and moves up to 8. Well
Thanks
done,
for that,
James.
everyone.
I thought you were going to get Lost Planet straight away, James. That's how I was like, maybe I should switch this.
I did know Lost Planet, but like I said, I just didn't know which one. And I knew as soon as I'd guess one, it'd be the wrong one, and then Shannon would do his
Shannon,
trick.
Yeah.
Shannon took that. Fell on that sword.
I panic in these situations. I just like whatever there's the first
Yeah,
game to
you-
come to mind. I just like quicker than James. Be quicker than James. Hope for the best.
I gotta build up
with
my
that,
reserves.
With that, let's
Deal.
bring it into what was this week's episode of the Press Start podcast. Once again, brought to you by SteelSeries and their new range of Alias microphones. Subscribe to us on Listener or the podcast service of your choice. Follow us at Press.au and visit the site at pressstart.com.au. We've been joined today by Shannon,
Yeah, you can follow me at Shannon Grixty.
James,
Yes, you can follow me at Jams, ATJMZ on X.
and Kieron.
Yeah, you can follow me at #BRAUN, and also you can go onto the Press Start YouTube channel and watch my video preview of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
I've been your host, Ewan Roxbury. You can follow me on Twitter and all socials for that matter, at Ewan_Roxbury. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, happy gaming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.